Rightio, welcome back. This is number 5 in the video series of building your own drone. We're looking at our base of our drone, which has got our power distribution board and 4-in-1 ESC just there. Here is our flight controller just here, and we're going to solder on the 5.8 gigahertz video transmitter. Now, it was soldered on a couple of minutes ago because I have flown this aircraft, but I desoldered it. I shortened the wires. I'm going to tidy up all this long wiring, desolder everything, and show you where everything gets soldered onto for this particular aircraft. Remembering it's a Maytech F722 SE Mini flight controller board, 20mm between the mounting holes, and it will go just here, just like that. The video transmitter I'm going to mount down in here underneath this capacitor, and I'm going to route these 4 wires, 2, 3, 4, up between the positive and negative of the capacitor, and it's going to just come either underneath the board or just around it, underneath the board, just around it, and mount on this back corner. I'll show you, and we'll solder it on there. I'll show you where it goes. Looking over here, this is the, get rid of you little fella, this is where this is my F722 Mini, and that was the URL for it. Again, take a screenshot. Get rid of the cursor. Okay. And I've ripped a screen capture off it, and whacked it into OneNote where I keep all my notes and pictures and things, so that I can draw on it. So there's a flight controller board. You can see my direction of travel arrow. Now you can't because I've hidden it. Put him back up. Might move him. That's probably alright. I can just leave it there. Right, there's my direction of travel arrow just there. Get some light onto it. Yeah, just there. And where that is, I will move you out of the way, is my 4 connections are ground, just there, 5 volt coming in there, so 5 volts, even though I may be plugging a higher voltage in, I will be plugging a lot higher voltage in to the camera. There's a regulator in here that picks off 5 volts. I have, it's on this connection here, VTX, video transmitter, and UART T3. Now, remember we said I had a look in beta flight what the UARTs were? Universal Asynchronous Receive Transmit. They're just communication ports on your board that they can communicate to peripheral devices such as your receiver and your video transmitter, and I don't know what else you'd have there, bits and pieces. UARTs and your GPS, they all connect via a UART that you set up in beta flight. Now, so that's coming in on UART T3. And again, if you remember in beta flight, if it's on transmit here, it'll be on R3 on your device. So in this case, on my board, on my VTX, my video transmitter here, it says, let's have a look at the colors. It says up here voltage in is red. Hard to see, it's probably not going to focus, so don't even try. The red one, voltage in, black is ground. The white one is RX OSD. So that's the on-screen display. That means that on that white wire coming in, that channel coming in, will be telemetry overlaid over the top of my video signal. And that telemetry can be anything I want. It might be a GPS lat long, because I've got GPS attached. It might be battery voltage. It might be distance from home. It might be a compass heading. All that telemetry coming in, it can be overlaid on top of my video signal. And if I've got my flight controller goggles on, or I could just use some sort of little TV screen, as long as it's got a 5.8 gigahertz receiver on it. Right, I can see all that data, that telemetry. Okay, and yellow is always video, and there's yellow there, so video. In order from top: red power 5 volts, black ground, white RX receiver OSD, and yellow video. And remember, for UARTs, a TX on one side goes into the RX on the other side. So here on our flight controller, I've got T3, alright, is my T3 is my transmit, and it's going into, on my receiver, the RX receiver. And in beta flight, it'll be on UART3. It'll be UART3. Okay, and the T transmit on here, circled, goes into the receiver on here. Now let's have a think about that. See that the video transmitter, RXOC, I'll leave it at that at the moment anyway, without confusing you too much more. I'll tell you. See, this is going into transmit on the flight controller, because that's where all the data is sitting. You know, it's holding or storing or remembering all the data from everything that's going on around it. Now, GPS is coming into it. Now, magnetic headings are coming into it. Now, everything, battery voltage is coming into it from a battery. So it's coming out of transmitting. It's transmitting out of here, and this thing, the VTX, although it is a transmitter, it's receiving that data from the flight controller board. And it can stumble. Even though it's a transmitter, it's receiving the data from the flight controller. And it's transmitting it out to, a receiving device, your video goggles, which has got a receiver in them. What a great system, I keep saying. Okay. So, next thing is, what we're going to do, and this is maybe a little difficult to do, is I'm going to, I've actually, these wires were longer and they were connected in their correct place. I shortened them. I just need to strip them. I strip that one, the earth, and these are so thin I can just get the insulation off with my fingers. I don't need to do that kind of cutting around it like you ring bark a tree. Not that I've ever ring barked a tree, but they're tiny little wires, really thin, and I just got enough fingernails. Don't cut all your fingernails off because you need them. And yellow, and there we go. You can just see I've stripped the insulation off all of them. Okay. Now I'm going to tin those. So I've got my helping hands, which are wonderful things. Keep them all separated, whack them in there, try not to damage the wires, and don't let them join to each other. Just check that all the wires, I shouldn't put my greasy fingers all over the wires, but the strands, individual strands that are wrapped seem to be holding together. If they'd come apart like that, the strands, I'd just twist them into a, like you twist the end of a tissue. But these are looking pretty good. Now, soldering irons. So this is what we got here. Over here, I'm just going to pick you up and show you and take you over here. This is what we've got at school. Okay, it's a Hakko FX 888D from Mechatronics in Sydney, 32 Wallaby Way, Sydney. Mechatronics, and these are fantastic. They're hobby grade, but they're really good hobby grade. Normally it'd be 350 degrees centigrade that I would set here, but I think these just need calibrating again, so I've just bumped it up a little bit. Okay, and as you can see, you've got your station there where it sits. Okay, where you keep the tips nice and clean. Okay, so I've got my Hakko there, got my soldering iron. I'm right to go. So this is you're going to see the top of my head from up there, because I'll be working down here. And I'll be using my magnifiers too, because I just can't see. Put these on. And yeah, they're really good. They're really, really good. Sometimes I use them over the top of my glasses, sometimes I can see these ones are alright anyway, without them. But when I get down onto the board, I'm going to get really, really close. So get some lead-free solder, tin my tip, and wipe it, and try to get that tip nice and silvery, like a snow-capped mountain. Get all the impurities off. Apply some heat. What's good about the Hakkos is, the Hakkos, it'll keep the tip at that temperature, even though that heat is getting sucked down along whatever and into the componentry. It keeps the tip at that temperature. Little fella. Don't put a big blob on it. Keep that tip nice and clean. Don't put a huge blob on it, because we just got to be careful. Those solder pads on the flight controller are so small that we don't want to short out between the pads. Okay. Get flight controller. Come here. You're right. So I did say that it's probably wise for me to pause this video every now and then so I can get things set up. I did say I was going to feed these wires up underneath here. I'm going to mount the VTX, the video transmitter, here. It's got some mounting holes, 20mm by 20mm, but I don't have any little screws. But I am thinking about just doing some hot glue, dabs of hot glue there, which may or may not be good, because this thing will heat up, but it shouldn't heat up. There's a copper there. Okay, so we'll leave it there, and I'll get things set up. Okay, we're ready to start again. I'm going to turn my extra light on here to get the heap of light down onto the board. Let's have a look at what we got. I've threaded this underneath the capacitor, the 4 wires from the VTX, and you can see these 4 wires, just to remind you, is red 5 volts, black ground. You can see where they're connecting here. White is receive on the VTX, which means it'll go to transmit on the flight controller, and we'll hook that up to a UART. And yellow is video. So threaded those up there. I'm going to gently put that down there. And I'll secure that somehow. Maybe temporarily with some dabs of hot glue. But if the VTX gets too hot, then that's not going to be much chop. Tweezers come in handy. Right, on the flight controller, let's have a look at what our connections are here. Should we start off with? Now, let's do the receiver first of all. The nano receiver, the TBS, Tin Black Sheet Nano receiver. Now I've got over here the pinout. Get rid of you. The pinout for the nano receiver, and you can see that it's got channel 1 just here, channel 2. I'll tell you, at the moment we don't know which one is transmit and which one is receive, which one it gets hooked up to. The 5 volt and the ground are easy. Where do I wire those up to? But I do know from, so I'll minimize you, I do know from my my Maytech board here, from the spec sheet, that basically the two main tabs on this website, on this particular web page, tells me what I need to do. So I come down here, scroll down to where the flight controller is. It tells me this is a picture of the GPS, but also it's got my receivers. It's got just different brands of receivers. So a Free Sky receiver, F-Port. I'm not sure who has F-Port, what company, but this is Crossfire. Okay, these are just other communication protocols down here that different companies will use, but this is Crossfire. And it tells me that on channel 2 it goes to the T2 pad, and channel 1 goes to the R2 pad. Remember, with UARTs, transmit on the flight controller will go to receive on the device, and transmit on the device will go to receive on the flight controller. So if we keep that in the back of our mind, Crossfire, we can determine where it goes. So this is going to go to transmit 2 on the flight. Okay, this particular channel 2 is going to go to T2, transmit 2. So channel 2 is that one. All right. So for me, that is the yellow coloured wire I've got soldered there. It's channel 2. I've just flipped it upside down. The yellow wire, and it goes to T2, just on the flight controller. Bring you back online. So that yellow wire, which is channel 2, goes to T2. Just to get some focus, and you can see the yellow wire coming into T2. Okay. The white wire is on R2, and that's what it tells me. Get rid of you again. Okay, and the R2 is here, goes to channel 1, which was that next one down. Okay, so channel 2 is the yellow one and R2 is the white one. Transmit joins on to receive. So you would solder that up just like that. Bam. So let's pretend we've soldered that up. Our receiver's soldered up. This is now the connection from the flight controller to the current, to the 4-in-1 speed controller with one current sensor. Let's go back to that. Sorry for the macabre lighting from here, but I need the light. So we come back here, go back to my other tab. Oh no, I don't need to go back to my other tab. There's my 4-in-1 ESC with my current sensor, and you can see just here, there's the plug. Awfully hard with not having enough screens. So what I'll do is I'll just minimize that a bit, bring him over here. Alright, so you can see there's my plug coming in and the connections coming over here. Okay, so there's my plug. Okay, let's get you into OneNote, that's why I can't write on it. Pause this just for a tick. Okay, just start that again. Here's my connection on the flight controller. And this is what I have to solder, this part here. So what those are is battery, and it says VBAT, just there. VBAT means voltage from the battery. So it's not 5 volts like some of those other red connections. This is a full voltage from the battery coming through. And being passed up, so the battery comes into this electronic speed controller through here, whatever that voltage is, comes in this way, and it gets divvied out to the motors, the 4 motors, and also goes up into the flight controller. The flight controller can handle that, the voltage from the battery, so the full whatever it is that you pass into it. I've got a ground, as you can see, normal ground. There's nothing on this 5 volt thing here. Then we've got the current sensor here, CRNT, because it's we can have that telemetry coming back to my goggles if I want. Current is, and then there's my 4 motors just there, because control's got to come back out along this bus here, these lines here, to control each of the 4 motors, to spin them up or spin them down so that you can control it. So let's have a look at what that looks like. Right, so that goes into there, plugs in. Right, and on this side we need to solder onto it. And there's my connections. Red, focus, VBAT, then there is ground. It's reversed to what you can see just here, because I'm looking at the other side. Next one is current sensor. There's VBAT, ground. There's that 5 volt thing isn't soldered onto. Then the current. I can see a C there. I don't know if you can see it. Just there. And then there's S1, S2, S3, and S4 where my 4 motors are there with the white wires. Okay. That blue wire, be very careful, one of these might break off and I'll have to redo it. The yellow is on the current sensor, the blue one, I can't remember, that would be, let me just pause this again, I can see it coming down through here. I just have to remind myself what that blue wire is for. I don't think it's actually doing anything. No, it would be R6. So just stand by. We'll have a look what that does. Yeah, R6, it says UART6 receiver for BL32 speed ESC electronic speed controller telemetry. I don't think I'm using it for anything. I don't think in Betaflight I've got anything on UART6, but I'd have to have a look. BL32 is the firmware that sits on electronic speed controllers. So I don't think I've got it soldered on, but I don't think it's doing anything. Maybe I soldered it on, that blue wire, just there, just to keep it out of the way. Right, so we've got our solder joints for our receiver, our solder joints for our electronic speed controller and power basically that's what that is for. It'll plug in there. The other one was camera. Okay, focus to my FPV camera. Alright, there's the plug for it. It'll plug in there. It's a short little wire because it sits up near the front. And once again, oops, careful, camera is, yep, just here. And my settings are, my solder points are earth, there's my power, and that could say, let's see if we can focus. Yeah, there's my earth. I'm not sure if that says V battery, voltage of the battery, but that camera can handle like up to 14 volts or even more. Let's have a look. V, just here, V battery, battery voltage filtered, max 1 amp load on this pad. Okay, so it's voltage from the battery coming straight into the camera, which the camera's got to be able to handle. So if you put a little tiny camera on that could only handle 5 volts, you're going to fry it, because that's voltage of whatever your battery is. And then the yellow one is C1, just here on this pad, which is camera 1. And you can have, this can actually have 2 cameras on it. So that's soldered on. That plug came with the camera. Right, so that's, yep, and he drops it. That's all goods. So what will happen is this will be soldered on to my flight controller. This part here, this video transmitter, the VTX. This is going to be interesting. So let's orientate ourselves. That's forward. It was up in the top left here. There it is up here. Top left, orientating the board just the same way. So I've got, it goes into T3, ground, 5 volt, and VTX. So the signal for the video comes out of there, and any control comes out of this UART here. So if I carefully, I'm going to spin this around. And just clip on. I don't have much to clip on here. So I've got my helping hands holding on. And I should be able to get access to that. Now what I would do is I would tin, if I was soldering onto these pads, let's use any of these pads as an example. Wait for focus, and it's about to fall off. Any of these pads, I would tin those first just with a little dab of solder, making sure that solder doesn't flow between the pads and short them out. Okay. Right to go. Now my ground was, so that's a USB port there. So my ground was closest to the USB port, which was that one. There. The ground's going to go there. So I've tinned that particular pad, I've tinned the wire. Try to do this without putting my magnifiers on. Nice steady hand. really difficult and I can't see what I'm doing. If everything moves around, it makes it just really hard. No, it's just not taken to that pad. Students contacting me on Teams about a problem or whatever. So that particular student will be able to see themselves, their name. These tweezers are just really not very powerful. You just can't squeeze and hold. The whole thing's moving on me. So no, that's not working. Pause, reevaluate, try again. Been mucking about with this, but this is the last one I've got is VTX coming under here. I tell you what, without these glasses it would be impossible. It would be impossible without these things. So, what have we got? Can we see? So there it is, soldered up on the flight controller. That's a VTX. Now hopefully I haven't cut myself short and made this too small. So this will run just around the outside here. So without those glasses, I just wouldn't be able to do it. Tuck that in. It sits like that. Okay. So VTX on. So there's a flight controller sitting on top of the power distribution board and 4-in-1 ESC. The VTX is soldered on. I've got my receiver soldered on, and I've got my connection to my, oops, don't do that, everything falls out. And I've got my speed controller connection soldered there. I just haven't done these screws up yet, so they all just fell out. But we can get that on there and put the last one back and put them down flat. Okay. Right. So all my solder connections and that's going to go in there. Make sure I don't stuff that up. Okay, good, and that's my camera. The camera will go connect to there. Like that. I'll mount that VTX. Antenna will come up. Probably put a cable tie across that connection there, so the antenna just across there, because as it's under load there, that might pop off, so I'll put a cable tie across there around the bottom to secure that there. back, and we're almost ready to assemble it. I just got to really, you know, I'm not sure about the length of that. I might leave the length of that cable there for the receiver, for the TVS Nano receiver, because I might route that somewhere and I might need that length. Okay, so that probably will do us for the soldering of the flight controller. Now obviously I haven't spoken to you about the power distribution board, but those 3 wires just get soldered on down there on those pads, just a normal soldering technique. And remember, if the motor goes backwards, you just have to swap any two of those 3 wires. Okay, doesn't matter what 2 that you swap them out. Right, okay, that will do for this particular video. The next one will be just mounting that receiver and then putting everything together, screwing the motors down, and then hooking the flight controller up to beta flight and going through the settings there. Okay, and that is it from me. Cheers.